Check on YouTube as well. But I think so far things are looking good. Okay, awesome. Cool. Okay, well, I did put a link in the chat. I'm not sure if it came through. I'm going to send it again. We're going to be talking about feedback in software engineering. And in particular, this is going to be sort of like a career development kind of focus, right? So I don't mean feedback necessarily from like a technical engineering perspective or frequency and that kind of stuff. I mean feedback, literally like the interactions that you're having with others. So just wanted to clarify that. This is going to be talking about some things that I had in my newsletter. So that's what the link that I put in the chat is. I don't know if you're on Instagram, I don't think I can send links, but let's see. Maybe. I don't know. That looks kind of sketchy. I tried to do it. I don't think it actually worked. But so it's on my newsletter. If you want to check it out, it's at weekly.devleader.ca. It's totally free to subscribe to, so you don't have to worry. There is a paid option, but not forcing anyone to do that. And the other part that I want to mention, this is going to be like all the live streams I have. It is going to be based on your questions and things like that as well. So please do make sure that you're jumping in to ask questions. I want to be able to spend the time talking about the things that are of interest to you. So I am going to be talking about feedback. However, if you would like to be able to ask questions about other things as well, please just do that. I would much rather dedicate the time to specific things that you're interested in. Hello, Maria. I'm just checking my, looks like my LinkedIn chat is coming through, but the names are broken. So that's kind of funny. And I guess I should turn that on for others to see as well. There we go. Cool. So you can see like the LinkedIn stuff is saying it's just LinkedIn user. Not sure what's up with that, but I'm watching the LinkedIn comments directly as well. So cool. Okay, topic is going to be feedback for software engineers. And I wanted to start off by talking about kind of like traditionally what we see feedback as. It's pretty like this kind of stereotypical thought about feedback is like, I'm working for my manager and they're going to give me feedback about my role. And I would say like this kind of junior engineering perspective is really, I'm going to be getting feedback from my manager, and you're anticipating sort of this feedback that is probably going to be harsh and you're going to have to work through. And it's really just this like very specific example of one type of feedback with one audience that a lot of us are hyper focused on. And I'm not saying that everyone thinks that way. It's just one of the most common ways when I hear people talk to me about feedback in their careers, like this is what they got on their mind. I need feedback from my manager, or I'm anticipating feedback from my manager, and how do I prep for that? And what's interesting about this to me is that the concept here is usually that people are expecting that they get constructive criticism, so something that's pretty difficult to hear. And a lot of the time, what I like to hear is that people are saying like, I'm actually, hoping for this. I want to have something that will help me grow. And I think that's really cool. I'm going to get, different sides of this where some people are very much like, hey, I'm nervous about it, but also sometimes it's like, but I'm excited because I know I need to hear it. I want to grow. And I think I wanted to start by saying I think that's a really good framing for it, because ultimately, when we're thinking about feedback in our software engineering careers, and I guess like really any career, it's just we're going to be talking about software engineers specifically, if you're not getting feedback and kind of learning about the different things to improve upon, the different areas, it's going to be very difficult to grow. So I love hearing that from especially junior software engineers, that this is top of mind for them. I think that's awesome. Now, the thing that I want to call out, and this is kind of something we'll be going back to throughout the course of this talk, is like, it's a bit of an exercise that I want you to do for yourself. So if you're watching the recorded version of this, it will still be applicable. But if you think for a moment, if you're the kind of person that wants to be able to get constructive criticism because you want to be able to grow, this is, like I said, it's a common thing. When is the last time that you gave someone else constructive criticism or direct feedback, right? So if this is something that you want for yourself because you want to hear it to be able to grow, when's the last time that you did this for someone else? It's not a trick question. There's no trick to it. I just want you to think about it. From Twitch, we have how to get a job. You are going to have to offer more details when you ask questions like this. I'm happy to try and answer them. A job doing what? Oh, should one learn Zig? When it comes to programming languages, I want to suggest like you can do like market research. If you go to latterly.io, shout out to John Vandeveer. He's got a lot of data on this. He's got a PhD in economics and spends time sort of on the side for his business, being able to help educate people in what's sort of the best bang for your buck for trying to get into software engineering. And the way that he frames it is looking at what the majority of companies are hiring for. So if you think about it backwards, right, it's like, it's not just like, what should I go do? It's like, what are companies hiring for? If you optimize for that, in theory, you're setting yourself up for the best chances of success. The question here is, should one learn Zig? My perspective on this stuff is that it's not really important to, hyper focus on, one language, like it being the best. Nothing like that. I would say, how many places are using Zig? If those are places you want to work at, great. If not, and there's not a lot of places, you might be setting yourself up for a difficult time to hyper focus on that. However, if you're just starting out and you're going to pick a language, I mean, you want to be able to learn the concepts of any programming language that you're working with. You're going to be shifting through different programming languages in your career, like 99% of the time. That's going to be the case where you're not just using one language. So I guess my personal recommendation would not be to do something like Zig or, I mean, even Rust, right? A lot of people talking about Rust now. I still wouldn't say it's a good first language. I would, if you're trying to land a job, I would be trying to look at what people are hiring for statistically. It doesn't mean that the language is superior or not, just what people are hiring for. Okay, so, and then going back to the topic of feedback, right? So the question that I had was, if you're trying to get direct feedback, when's the last time you gave it? And Maria has another comment in the chat here saying, I notice it's important to build trust and relationships first. Absolutely. Right. So we'll see some of this as we go through this talk. But when it comes to actually giving the feedback or setting yourself up in a situation where you want to be able to have someone give it to you, having trust, having respect, having a closer working relationship with someone allows them to be able to give you that feedback. Something that I'm hoping I remember to say the phrase as it comes up in the conversation is this concept of radical candor. If you've not heard of radical candor, do a quick search for it. But ultimately, this is going to be something that we want to be able to have in our working relationships with people. And as a software engineering manager, that's something I strive for as well. So we'll see that as we go through this. On Instagram, what are your opinions on LeetCode? This is something I talk about a lot. I think if you're trying to apply for jobs, especially in big tech, you probably need to brush up on your LeetCode. I've mentioned this before, that even for my own role as a principal software engineering manager at Microsoft, like, I don't write code at work. I still studied LeetCode problems before applying. I did have a coding question in my interviews. It was kind of like a LeetCode style problem. And I do recommend that for interviewing, especially for big tech, brushing up on LeetCode is helpful. In my opinion, that's about where it stops, though. Now, if you find that it's a good exercise for you to get yourself writing code, I don't want to dissuade you from that. I just think that the best way that you can get better at being a software engineer is by building software. So I would much rather people focus time on building things versus just practicing LeetCode problems, because that's you are coding and solving problems, but it's a very isolated focus. So I don't recommend that that's something people get overly confident about, and it doesn't translate as well into real software engineering. Another question is Microsoft evil. I work at Microsoft, man. Like, if you'd like to have me answer more of your questions, please try to make them so that we're not just distracting from the rest of the talk. Okay, so as Maria said, we want to make sure that we can have good trust in our relationships with people at work. You want to have communication, right? You have to build up these things. So I'm going to start by going through topics. I didn't say no immediately because I'm reading 3 screens and I'm trying to present on feedback. So that's exactly why I didn't say no immediately. I'm going to go through in the order that I wrote my newsletter article in, which is going through junior roles, senior, sort of more intermediate, and then I'll even touch on the manager perspective as well, because I think that there's similar but different stories that we want to talk about at all of these levels. And another common theme that we'll see is that it's going to be giving feedback and receiving feedback at each of these levels. So to start, like I said with junior software engineers, one of the common things that they are focused on is receiving feedback, right? And I think that this is really important to be in a position where you're thinking about it. So in my experience, mentoring juniors, this is a common thing they bring up. And I would say if you're watching this, if it's not something you've thought of or you're hesitant about it, like, hey, feedback seems kind of scary. Maybe if I can be sort of invisible, I can kind of keep working, get my stuff done, and I'll kind of get by. And sure, you could, but I think that you'll probably be disappointed with things like career progression, your own sort of self-improvement. If you're not getting feedback, it's going to be challenging to figure out the right things that you should be working on and building on. So something that I wrote down is some action plans in my newsletter where being proactive, you want to be asking for feedback. So what does this look like? If you're junior, you're new to a team, you're going to be working very likely with people that are more senior than you. You might be working with some of the other junior folks that are new on the team too. But anyone that you're working with, try to be proactive and find opportunities to ask for feedback. So like we've already said on this chat so far, you do want to be trying to build up some trust with your colleagues so that they are in a position to give you feedback. The other thing that I would mention, and this goes with the building trust part, is that when you're asking for feedback, you want to make sure that you're clear about what kind of feedback you're interested in. And to give you an example, if you're, working with, you're new to a team, you're junior, and you're like, okay, well, Nick said that I should be asking for feedback when I'm working on projects with people and stuff like that. If you just say, hey, could I get some feedback from you on how it was to work together? The very typical thing that you'll get is that people don't like giving direct feedback. It's not easy. It's challenging to give constructive criticism, or it's challenging to think of things to improve on. Then as a result, people will kind of go like, yeah, like it was good to work with you. Like you did a great job. Here's a couple of things you did good. And pat on the back, move along. And especially as a junior, like that can be nice to start building some confidence. So I'm not saying, hey, if you hear that kind of thing, this is a terrible thing. It's nothing like that. That's great. It's great that you got some positive feedback. But if you're looking to improve, it would be very helpful if you can start having things pointed out to you that are opportunities for growth. So getting direct feedback is important. And that means that when you ask people for feedback, you want to be very explicit. Hey, look, I'm trying to grow in my career. I'm new to this. I'm trying to figure things out. I would be very grateful if you could give me some feedback on some things that I could do better. To make it easier for other people, you can phrase it like, could you give me tell me about some opportunities that you see for growth for me? And that way people are less inclined to be like, like, how do I tell Nick he's terrible at code reviews? Like, you're kind of trying to figure out a way to make it easier for them, but you do want to let them know that you want direct feedback. Right? If people are just kind of dancing around the feedback they're trying to give you and not being honest and transparent and direct, the feedback's going to be watered down and not that valuable. Okay, so that's kind of receiving feedback. Again, you can have that conversation not only with your peers, but your manager. I would say a big gap would be if you're not in a position to be having conversations like that with your manager. That's your priority number one. You want to work on that with your manager, make sure that you have one-on-ones and other opportunities where you can get that direct feedback and build that working relationship with them. Sometimes, and I can say this as a manager, and I've seen other managers kind of act like this, sometimes it's, you have other things you're focusing on, someone's doing good, and it's easy to just kind of be like, Okay, let me get my attention somewhere else. But the reality is that everyone's individual. The amount and the type of feedback they need is different. So it can be, easy and not good for a manager to kind of back off and not give you feedback at the cadence that you're looking for. So do be transparent with them. Let them know the type of feedback you're interested in. And you can demonstrate to them once you start, and this goes with your peers too, once you start getting that feedback, be proactive about trying to work on it, right? If someone's giving you feedback and you're never acting on it, if they want to give you feedback in the future, they might be like, well, whatever, this person doesn't actually care. They're just kind of wasting my time asking for it. So be proactive as well when you start getting it. As a junior, though, there's this opportunity to start giving feedback to others as well. And this can be great because I think when I talk about things like soft skills for software engineers, I say this a lot, that soft skills are extremely important. You need them with your technical skills. And people are like, well, how do I practice those? Like, I've been so focused, back to the lead code question, right? Like, I was grinding lead code for 12 months straight, and like, I actually don't know how to work on a team. Like, how do I work with other people? How do I get these soft skills? You can think about being in a position where you want to practice being able to give feedback to your peers. If you're like, wow, Nick, that seems like it's going to be so unnatural, so difficult. Like, I don't know how I could possibly ever have an open conversation like that with someone on my team. Well, there's a sign, right? It's probably an opportunity that you should try working on some of these work relationships to make sure that you're building trust with other people, that there's a level of respect with them. And that way, when you go to give them feedback, you can feel like, hey, I'm just trying to help this person out. There's different techniques for being able to deliver it, but I think it's important that as a junior, you start thinking about feedback being given to others. If you're trying to help make a team better overall, we'll see more of this as we get into the more senior roles. Feedback's a big part of that. It's not just a manager telling everyone on the team, like, here's your specific feedback, go figure it out. If you have a working relationship with your peers where you're getting feedback from different directions, that can be extremely valuable. So if you start practicing that early, it really can help make a whole team improve overall over time. So this is one of the things. So at Microsoft, I participate in something called EMC. It's early in career mentorship circles. And one of the things that I try to let people know in the one-on-one mentoring that I do with them, because a lot of them will ask about how they talk with their manager, how they get their feedback and all this kind of stuff. I go through this, but then I remind them of this last point I said. Make sure that you're finding opportunities where you are starting to practice it as well. Before I go into the more like senior level roles, I wanted to talk about something that we have at Microsoft that's called perspectives. And one of the reasons why this is so like a topic that I'm going through right now is because of the time of year and this thing that we have called perspectives. So Microsoft has this tool called Perspectives. It's the name of the tool. And it's about, if you could imagine, it's about sharing perspectives. And the way that this tool works is that you can go request perspectives or request feedback. It's a good stutter. Request feedback from someone else. And you can write a message to them and say, hey, whatever you want to say, have like feedback on this project we worked on. And it's this opportunity where someone can give you feedback, and it's also visible to the managers. So I want you to kind of think through what this dynamic looks like. We have a tool. You can request feedback of other people, and you can send it to whoever you'd like. So you can go request feedback. When they send a response, it's visible to you and your manager. So this is a really awesome tool, and I think it's got a lot of potential. But I think because people aren't comfortable with giving direct feedback, the value of this tool drops dramatically. And what I mean by that is if you think about you having to use this tool, right? So I want you to imagine you're at your desk and it's around this time of year where we start talking about performance and rewards and people go, oh, I should probably get some feedback because it's a good signal for people to start thinking about it, but you should be doing this more often. You start getting these requests for perspectives. So imagine you're sitting there, you're getting these requests coming in, and you're going, okay, I gotta go write feedback for people. The easy thing to do is, of course, write nice things to other people, right? It's just easy to do that way. Yeah, it was great working with Nick on this project. We did a good job. We got it delivered. He was nice on the pull requests. Thumbs up, pat on the back. And the other thing going through your head is like, wow, like if I give good feedback to Nick, I bet he'll give good feedback to me. And because our managers can see this feedback, that means our managers are going to be like, heck yeah, these guys are doing awesome. We're going to do so much better if we just keep giving everyone good feedback, right? It's this perpetuated, like, you pat me on the back, I'll pat you on the back kind of thing. And I think that waters down the value of the tool. And I think it stems from a couple of problems, right? One is that people find it difficult to give direct feedback, which is understandable. I've been managing people for 12 years. It's still challenging for me. It's a difficult thing to do. So that's one part. And then the other part is this idea that only if you're getting positive feedback, like that's the only way that a manager is going to say, oh, this person must be doing good, right? Now, I'd like to talk about that second part because I think it's a bit of a myth. So, of course, sure, if I see people getting good feedback, that's nice. But odds are I probably am in tune with that already. It's not going to be a surprise to me, right? What is not a red flag or a problem to me is if I saw someone on my team get feedback that was constructive. I'll make up an example, right? Hey, it was, good to work with you, Joe, but it would be more beneficial if you could split up your pull requests to be smaller. It was kind of hard to navigate working with you on some things, and I felt like, if you could break some things up into smaller chunks, it'd be easier for me to give you better feedback, and I think we could move faster if we work together next time and you're doing this kind of thing, right? That's not harsh feedback. That's constructive. That's something for you to work on. As a manager, I'm not going to read that and go, oh, guess what, Joe? Guess we can't promote you this year because you didn't break up your pull requests. In fact, it's a really good opportunity for Joe to be able to have conversations with me and say, hey, I got this feedback. And you don't have to agree with all the feedback you get. But if you did and you're like, hey, this was something I could go action, it'd be great to talk with me as your manager and say, hey, I got this feedback and here's the steps I started to take to improve that. You know what that shows me? That shows me that you care, that you're interested in growing, and that you put the effort into doing it. All of those things are awesome, right? If you were getting feedback that was like, hey, like, Joe, it was really difficult to work with you. You suck, and I wish you had a different personality, and all of the feedback was like that, and then you come and talk to me and you're like, yeah, I just hate everyone. Like, obviously, that's going to be a different dynamic. But getting constructive criticism that's direct, getting this feedback can be very helpful for you to show growth. Part of getting promoted is showing that you are growing, that you are improving, that you're getting better. It's just more evidence to help you. So I wanted to kind of change that perspective for some people. I realize I'm not talking to the entire world of software engineers, but as an engineering manager, if I see someone getting direct constructive feedback, it's not like an oh crap, like, you're never getting promoted kind of thing. I think if you can action it, there's a lot of benefit there. Okay, but the first part that I mentioned there was that giving feedback is hard. That's going to be a theme throughout this whole conversation. That's how I started this talk off, right? When's the last time you gave direct feedback to someone, right? We don't do it often because it's hard to do. And it can be awkward. You have to put effort into the working relationships to feel less awkward doing it. Okay, let's move on to like a mid to senior level role. I'm not trying to assign direct titles to these things because if I say, software engineer, XYZ 1, 2, 3, there's going to be different meanings at different companies. I just wanted to kind of break this down into different groups, kind of go an increasing level as we go across this. So if you're at the more mid to senior level, you're going to have the same type of thing where you need to go asking for feedback. But something interesting starts to happen around this level that's not impossible at the more junior levels, but it becomes a little bit more frequent. There's better opportunities for it. And of course, this is going to vary depending on the company you're at or the organization you're in, but you may have more opportunities to start collaborating outside of your team. And if it's not outside of your team, it might be that you're better situated. If you're only working with one or two people within your team, maybe now you have an opportunity to be working with more people. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that you have this opportunity to start getting more feedback. Your circle of influence is growing, which is good. This is part of becoming more senior. You're generally having more technical impact, and your circle of influence is growing. So, what better way to continue to improve upon that than asking for feedback from some of these new colleagues and peers that you're working with? I think it's a great opportunity, but you still have to work on these relationships. So, if you think about it, as you're becoming more senior, within your team, your working relationships are probably improving a lot, which is awesome. That's something we want. But as you start to work with people outside of your teams, this might be a completely new set of people, and you have to put in the effort to working with them, building up the trust and respect, right? The accountability with them. And that's going to take some time and effort. But if you invest into that, it's a great opportunity for you to start getting that feedback from them. Because again, if you just do the thing, like I said, with perspectives that we have, hey, Nick, could you send me a perspective? We worked on this cross team thing. If I was like, yeah, like you did good, but like, I don't know how to give you this good, like this constructive feedback because it's hard to do, I might just not do it. But if I was like, you know what, like this person worked pretty hard and like, I know I kind of was chatting with them. They actually seemed genuinely interested in trying to improve and stuff. I think I have a way that I could deliver this that they will find beneficial. Like, but without that working relationship and the trust and respect, it's really hard to deliver. So help other people help you, right? Build those relationships. The point with the senior thing here is that you have this opportunity to start getting feedback from outside of your direct team a little bit more frequently than at, say, a junior level. Okay. You'll see that the benefits kind of continue to stack. I'm not going to repeat everything that a junior and senior would benefit from. It's going to be continued, right? The same thing goes with working with your manager and getting that feedback, all of that. Okay, so something else that we can think about here, though, is giving feedback as a more mid to senior level engineer. And this is going to be an exercise if you are in a role like this. If you're going to be on the receiving end of this, this is for junior engineers, so you can kind of think through this example as well. But as someone who's more mid to senior, something that happens pretty frequently if you have more junior people on the team, especially brand new people to the team, maybe it's their first job, you're going to get a lot of questions, right? So you might have experienced this already. I worked with interns for almost my entire professional career. Even when I first started after graduating from university, we had interns right away. I went from being an intern for 5 years on and off, right, for 6 internships, right into working with interns. So always been around interns, and that's probably one of the reasons I like to try and help out more junior software engineers. There's a lot of similar patterns I see. So again, not a rule, but a similar pattern that we see is that people as juniors love to ask questions. And that's good. Because unfortunately, with all of the remote work now, I'm noticing that people are asking questions less. It's very challenging. You can't stay blocked. You need to be asking questions. But there's something that happens when people ask questions. And if you're more senior, you've probably experienced this. You have someone who's more junior come to you and they ask for help. Right? And you help them, you kind of show them, oh, like, here's where it is in the code, or you might, you pull it up on your screen because they've walked over to your desk, or you're screen sharing with them and you show them in the code, oh, it's right here. Just like you type out the code and say, hey, just do this. Great. You've helped them. They go off on their own, right? Easy. But then something happens, and that's that the next time that they have a problem, they go, well, I don't know what to do. And Nick helped me super easily last time. I'll just go back to Nick. And you go, oh, okay, fine, yeah. Like here, yep, it's this part in the code. Here's how you'd code it up. Let me do that quickly for you, see how it works. Okay, go off. And you start going, okay, like now I can finally get back to work here. And then this problem continues. And it continues because unfortunately you're perpetuating it and you might not realize it. So when you have people coming to you with problems, instead of just giving them the answer so you can get back to your work faster, which is what a lot of us want to do, we want to get our focus back. And a lot of the time we know the answer or we can find it out pretty quickly and we can just do it. We feel effective and push someone off. You perpetuate the problem because you're not teaching the other person how to problem solve. So, as someone who is more mid to senior level, this is an opportunity for you when it comes to feedback that you can start delivering feedback to the more junior folks in a way that they can understand and grow. For example, hey, like, really good job on asking questions. I think a way that you can improve upon that is trying something first. So I would like you to think about what you've tried so far the next time you come to me with a question. I'd be very glad to help you with it. I just want to make sure that you're working on your problem solving skills. And that way you become less reliant on me and other team members and you feel more autonomy and you can do your job better. So you can start doing this kind of thing with more junior engineers and you can think about it in two ways. One is if you're being selfish, this works great, right? If you're being selfish because you want your time back, and I don't blame you, I know that it can take a lot of time to go help other people. But if you're like, selfishly, I just want to get more time back, then invest a little bit more upfront with direct feedback to help other people. And if you're not selfish about it, you could be thinking, hey, how do I help this other person? How do I make the team become better? I like leaning into those ones. It's a more positive way to spin it. But you could give that direct feedback and have that framing in your mind saying, hey, look, this might be hard to do, but this person looks up to me. They're coming to me for questions. I think I can help them grow as an engineer by giving them this direct feedback, right? So a couple of different things that you can think about as a more senior software engineer. And I think I'm going to move on to I wrote in my newsletter, principal, staff, whatever you want to call it. I wrote knighted here. Any fancy name you want to give, the more upper end software engineers. At some companies too, like, I don't know, like at Microsoft, like there's distinguished engineers and stuff. Like the point here is that individual contributor, software engineer, sort of looking at the upper end of influence with respect to your team and organization. So you're going to see a pattern here. This is really just extending a lot of what the growth opportunities were that we saw at the senior and mid-level. So the framing is now not just, for getting feedback, right? It's not just, hey, it's this one team I was working with on this project. At these upper levels, you are potentially leading projects that span multiple teams. They could be cross-organization. So it's really just scaling up what I talked about for the senior engineers. You have many more teams, more roles, and potentially higher in sort of a differing amount of levels that you could engage with for feedback. So to give you an example at Microsoft, something that's really important as you become more senior, so at principal level especially, they're looking for organization-wide impact. And how they can determine if that's happening, aside from just the deliverables you're doing, is if the other engineering managers on other teams and above, like so we call them like group engineering managers. So if the other managers of managers can see the impact that you're having, right? They're able to say, yeah, I know that Nick was working on this project. He was leading it. He was working with my team members on it. They have insight into it. They can see the impact that you're having. That's a really good indication that you are working on what would be considered high impact things. So these are excellent individuals that you could and should be reaching out to say, hey, I would love to get feedback from you. And sure, you might get a pat on the back, because again, feedback's hard to give. But if you can get something that's positive, this is really going to help you because you're getting a very different perspective than you might just get from a direct peer working on the same project as you. Of course, you should be reaching out to those peers as well, having those types of conversations. But the point here is that as you become more and more senior, going to principal level and beyond, there are more roles and higher levels that you can be getting different perspectives, different types of feedback coming to you. The common theme, too, is that as you go to do this, those working relationships take time and effort to make people feel comfortable to give you the feedback. There are some people who don't need a lot of that work and they're just willing to give you direct feedback, but I would say that it's rare. And I say it's rare because it's awkward for people to do that. You probably don't know a ton of people who are willing to just give you direct feedback versus people that are willing to just tell you nice things. It's just uncommon. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just uncommon. Okay, so going the other direction with feedback, though, at this higher level, is that if you think about the scope of impact you have, this is again significantly greater as you've scaled up in role and level. So, what that means is instead of just helping individuals, right? The example I gave earlier with a mid to senior level engineer helping someone more junior was, hey, I can get some of my time back if I just help them, or I can help this individual grow. But when you can start giving feedback and having it on a wider scale, you can start shaping and influencing at team level and even outside of your team doing that, right? Because people are going to be looking up to you. This is something that I don't know if a lot of people realize. Again, this might depend a lot on like emotional intelligence, your awareness, things like that. But when you become more and more senior, what ends up happening is that whether you notice it or not, people will emulate your behavior. You have a lot of people that look up to you, even if you don't have a formal leadership role. This can happen even from, anything over like a brand new hire, right? As soon as someone has someone to look up to in terms of progress in their level or things like that, they're going to start to go, oh, like this person's doing these things. Like, that's good. I should do that too. And the more senior you become, the more that gets exaggerated, where the different behaviors you have, people try to emulate. So you're in a position where people are looking for your feedback, right? They want to emulate you. They want to do the things you're doing because they look up to you. So something I wrote in my newsletter was along the lines of like, by having a higher level, you sort of get this like implicit respect, right? It's not guaranteed, but a lot of the time it's helpful. You kind of get this implicit respect because of your level. But I would say do not rely on that. You kind of get it, but don't rely on it. You should still be putting an effort into your working relationships, because if it's just like someone is respecting you because like they heard your levels high, like it's almost kind of empty. But if you can kind of prove to them through your working relationships that you do care, then you can give more direct feedback, right? People don't want to be in a position where they're like, hey, I respect this person, and then that person's like, hey, like, your code reviews suck. You're going to be devastated. But if you think about your best friend, and I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but think about your best friend. If they happen to be a very senior software engineer and they're like, dude, your code reviews suck, you'd be like, oh man, like, well, tell me what I can do better. Right? Like if you think about how exaggerated that sounds, it all comes down to how good of a working relationship you have with the person, the trust, the respect, and all of those things you can work on with other people. You just have to have the social skills, the communication skills, and put in the time and the effort. So there is, I've talked about, all these soft skills. I've had people on the channel to talk about networking and things like that, the benefits of doing that. So it's something that you can invest into, and I would say you should invest into as you're becoming more senior. Okay, so just reading on LinkedIn here. I enjoy the points you've listed. Thank you. In what ways do you go about obtaining feedback when running live demos of a project? Okay, this is a good question. How do you organize the feedback in terms of priorities? How do you break down the feedback, start accumulating and recognizing the pattern, what needs to be added? How do you even go about expressing you want direct feedback? Do you use forums, polls? Okay, this is a really good question, and I have not seen this solved at startups I've been at and even at Microsoft personally. So the reason that I want to say that I haven't seen this solved is because I see demos having different purposes, and a lot of the time it's not clear or agreed upon ahead of time. So I kind of want to back up from this and explain what I mean by that, because I do really like this question. This is great. This is from, sorry if I get your name wrong, but Giovanni Hernandez. So when I think about demos, there's like, especially from an engineering manager's perspective, there's some times where we're like, hey, we want our team to be able to demo things because that can give them a sense of accomplishment. They can share with their team the things they built, right? It's kind of like a celebration. That's one thing. There are times where people want to demo because they want to collect feedback. Okay. When are you doing that though? Is the product already done? The feature already done? Because if so, when do you want to get the feedback? What's that going to feel like? You could collect feedback early on, so you have a prototype and you're like, hey, this is bare bones, but does the concept make sense? Right? There's all sorts of different forums for having demos. And in my experience, I have never seen everyone come to the discussion being on the same page. So I've seen it where we've said, hey, we want to make sure people can show off the work they've done and we can celebrate their hard work. It sounds great, right? Like people want that. They want to say, hey, I feel accomplished when I can demo what I've been doing. Awesome. I want to support that. So we host demo sessions. And then people go, well, those were too in depth. It was too technical. Or people are going, well, you didn't let me ask questions, right? I couldn't give my feedback. And it's like, well, we decided this wasn't going to be the forum for that. Okay, well, we need another forum where we can do that. So, okay, we need a demo session where people can give the feedback. So we change it, do a similar thing, but people can ask questions during the demo now. And then we get the feedback from the presenters that they feel crushed. They're like, I did all of this work and I had all of these people telling me why this was like all of the things that could have been better. This was wrong for so many reasons. And they go, I wish someone would have just told me sooner and I could have built the right thing. Right? Okay. So then we go to say, okay, well, we need to do demos super early. You got to talk with your product owner. And then people go, okay, well, that's taking so much of our development time. We have to keep demoing to our product owner that I don't want to go have a demo for the whole team or the whole org because that's more time. And then so we cut those out. And now people are like, well, I don't really feel like I'm getting that sense of accomplishment. I don't know what the other teams are doing. But the product owner's getting the feedback. So I think the point that I'm getting across here is that I think you really need to be crystal clear about what your goals are when demoing. And I hope that those examples make sense to kind of show to you that when people talk about demoing things, there are different goals. I'm not saying that you can't make them all happen in the same type of session or there isn't a way to break them up. But I think the biggest challenge is that people are not aligned on what those goals are. And as a result, it makes it very difficult for them to feel effective. So how do you organize the feedback in terms of priorities? So I'm going to have to give you a more specific example out of that variety that I gave you. And I would say that if you're doing the type of session where you're like, we're consciously going into this looking for feedback, so it's not too late, like we already shipped it, now we're getting your feedback. So you're going into it looking for feedback. Something that I would recommend is that regardless of the specific implementation, you want to make sure that anyone who has feedback is able to express it. So you could have this idea of people can ask questions live. You could have them all at the end. You could have it such that after people have demoed, You can go off to the side and collect feedback, whatever it is, but make sure that everyone who's interested in giving feedback can. And then what I would do is take that feedback and you work with your product owner to prioritize things. I'm saying product owner and not another specific role because depending on how you're working, whoever is prioritizing what is most important to work on, that's who would go looking through that feedback. That also might be a group of people. You might be in a situation where you're like, hey man, it's just a couple of engineers, we're the team, and like we got to prioritize stuff. That's cool. But the point is that if it's one person or, you know, an entity that is multiple people, you want to go review that stuff together. But if you give people the opportunity to kind of offer that feedback, you can go do it offline. And you follow up on, you know, asking more specific questions. How do you break down the feedback to start accumulate or recognize a pattern what needs to be added to the projects? So again, this is the type of thing that I would suggest you do regularly. I think it's important to show what's being worked on to the people that can make decisions. The other thing too is like, if you're doing, I'm reading this too now, if you're saying live demos, maybe you mean to external people, not just teammates and stuff like that. So my apologies if I misinterpreted that a little bit, but the same concepts apply, right? You're demoing it. You make sure that whatever your tooling is like, that anyone who has feedback can give it in. But generally it's up to a product owner type of role to prioritize things. And how they do that, I would say many people do it differently. I like to think about the different values that our team has, and then whatever our product happens to be, like the different areas that we're trying to help customers in. I want to try to give you a concrete example. When I worked in digital forensics, we had to make sure that everything, like speed was important. We were running scans on things, so speed was important, but it was more important to find as much as we could, right? So if it meant that we had to go slower to find more things, then we would. The other thing that was really important for us to prioritize was accuracy. So if we found things, because we're talking about a lot of the time deleted information, if we found things, we couldn't just, if we weren't totally sure what it was, we couldn't just say like, here's something. We'd need to give people context about what that was. We need to let them know like, hey, we're actually not even positive what this is, but this might be interesting. So we had these different levels of values that we had, and then we had to think about the features that we were offering. And you'll start to have themes of things coming up in terms of like, hey, could you offer support for this or that, or change this functionality? But we'd always bring it back to what we valued. So hopefully that makes sense. Like, we have to see where we stand with our values and our current product offering, weigh what's coming in, and you kind of bucketize them into the different feature areas or goals that you have for your product or service. And other tools, like, again, this is an implementation detail. So I've seen surveys and stuff go out that can be helpful. You could have ticketing systems where people can submit stuff. And then you have someone who's got to stay on top of it, and they can kind of see those tickets coming in and maybe group them together. So close them off and say, hey, it's a dupe of another one. We'll cast your vote over there. So there's a lot of ways you can do it, but hopefully that helps. Let me know, Giovanni, if you have more questions on that, or if I can answer in a different way, but happy to try and help. Okay, going back to the feedback in your career. We were talking about sort of like this principal level and sort of beyond. For upper level individual contributors. And the theme there was that you're in a position where you can have a lot of impact. And you do have people that are trying to emulate you. You get some implicit respect, but you should not just rely on that. You should put in the work to have those relationships built. The final part that I want to talk about is managers. Because this is, I think, important for managers to hear. And I think it's valuable if you're not a manager to think about what I would recommend is a good pattern for managers to fall into. Okay. So I'm just kind of reading my notes that I had here. So one thing, and I'm guilty of this early in my management career, so I like to talk about this because I've lived sort of doing the bad thing. Hey there, Joe on Instagram. Thanks for waving. Um, so the bad thing that you do as a manager is you think that you're doing think you're doing the right thing because it's easy. And that's basically everyone's doing sort of okay or good, so you don't give them feedback. It's just easy, right? You sit back, people are doing okay, they're doing good, no one's making noise. Great. You can focus on other stuff. You feel like you're getting more work done, and you avoid any difficult conversations because, if nothing's really bad, why are you going to go make a conversation difficult? You can just avoid it, right? But this is not a good pattern to be in because you're just literally not doing your job. um, Now, your job responsibilities and stuff will vary depending on where you're at. But one of the fundamental things that I think every engineering manager should be doing is helping their team grow, especially in their career. Personally, I've always said, like, if that means growth is not something I can offer within my team, then I've tried everything I can. And I don't feel bad if someone chooses to leave if I don't have any more growth opportunities for them. I need to be sort of happy and excited for them because they are continuing to grow even outside of what I'm able to offer them. So I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can so that I don't feel bad if their growth potential is beyond what I have to offer. So that means that we need to be positioned to give difficult feedback. And if you're going, hey, my team's doing good, I don't have any issues, I just, you're not trying hard enough. It's not about if your team has issues. That's when it's easy for you as a manager. If you have people, I have to cough, pardon me. If you have people on your team that have some challenges, whether it's skill issues or something else to work on, you're kind of being led in the direction of what to go work on, right? Like you have, it's like a lighthouse shining a light, and it's like, this thing needs attention. You should put effort into this, or attention into it at least, right? That, to me, that can make it easy. I'm not saying the conversations that follow are easy, but it guides you where to invest energy or attention. When things are overall pretty good or going great, and you say, well, that means I don't have to give feedback to my team. In my opinion, that's where you start to do a disservice to all of the awesome people on your team. Because if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, everyone is looking for direct feedback so that they know how they can continue to grow. And as soon as you go, these people are doing good, they don't need any feedback from me, that's where you start to fail them. So, that does mean that it's hard. If someone is doing really good, it can be really difficult to try and think of ways to give them feedback that will be beneficial. But I think that you need to do it. You need to spend the time doing it. It's challenging for me, right? I've learned this lesson years ago, but it's still challenging for me. Sometimes it means like it's challenging because how do I deliver this message to the person? I want them to know they're doing well, but here's an opportunity. And other times it's challenging because I'm thinking about their growth potential and what I have to offer. And I'm going, I need to get creative here. Really need to think about what would help them grow in their career. And it's difficult for me to find these opportunities. So it's difficult for many reasons. But I wrote in my newsletter, suck it up, have the hard conversations. So stop avoiding it if you're an engineering manager. I think that you need to be having them. And I would say, honestly, like if you're like, it's really difficult for me to do that, like I don't blame you, right? I've said this for every level we went through. It's really hard to give direct feedback. Now, I said I wanted to remember the phrase, and I remembered, so I don't want to forget to say it, radical candor. Radical candor is this idea that you have, and I don't want to butcher the exact definition, but sort of my interpretation of it is that you have enough trust and respect with someone in a relationship that you have at work, right? Or this could be friendship or whatever, but we're focused on work here. So there's enough trust and respect in this relationship that you can be brutally honest with someone and they're not like, wow, this person's so mean. In fact, they do quite the opposite. They might be taken back right at first, like, wow, that was that was blunt feedback. But that person knows and fully believes that every piece of feedback you give them is so that they can help grow and succeed. So when you have radical candor, you are able to deliver very difficult messages to people, and they're able to go, wow, like I need to think about that. Thank you so much for giving me that insight, because you're expressing that you think I have work to do, and because I really respect you and have a lot of trust with you, I know that you want the best for me. Just checking the chat here. Hello, sorry for bothering. I want to offer. No, you don't do that. How do I kick people out? Oh, easy. Just right click and block. Okay, so radical candor. It's again, I was saying this whole time, you want to work on your relationships. You want to build trust and respect. It takes time and effort. But when you invest into this, it allows you to reach this point of radical candor. So when you need to have difficult conversations with people as a manager, you can lean into this and say, look, like, you know that I'm trying to do, and you've been demonstrating to them, I've been trying to help you grow, I've been trying to help you level up, been looking for these opportunities, but we need to make sure that you can focus on this, whether it's a skill challenge or something else. You can have that conversation with them and say, look, we really got to make some progress here, and you can be direct with someone. And as a result, when you have radical candor, they will go, oh crap, like, this person really means it. They believe that this is the path, and I'll double down and focus on this. And not everyone will take the proper action, or not everyone is able to kind of make that progress. But I do think that trying to strive for radical candor as an engineering manager is critical. So it doesn't just happen if you stop trying to give people feedback, because it's just easy to sit back. Okay. The last part for engineering managers is, we talked about giving feedback for everyone, but receiving feedback. Because managers aren't special in this case. You're still a person that's trying to grow in their career, and you want to be able to get feedback. Now, I think there's two different ways that you can look at this for managers, and probably more, but the two that I'm going to talk about, one I'll just kind of touch on because it's the same that we talked about for the other levels, especially sort of at this principal level and high influence individual contributor level, which is, when you're getting feedback, you have a wider surface area to be getting feedback from. You have your direct reports, you have other teams, right? You might have other engineering managers. You've been collaborating on projects together across the organization. You have their bosses that you can be talking to get feedback. It's the same sort of idea. You have a wide surface area to get that feedback. But I hinted at the other one here, and that's from your direct team. And if you have a good trust and working relationship with them, you can be collecting this feedback from them to make sure that you are giving them the sort of feedback that they need. Right? You can learn from them how to coach and manage them more effectively. But if you don't ask them about how you're doing with them, you're just kind of guessing or hoping that you're getting the right signals. So for example, as an engineering manager, I'm guilty of this, by the way. I'm not standing here on my soapbox saying like I do this perfectly. Absolutely not. I'm guilty of what I'm about to ask you right now. But if you're an engineering manager, and if you're not, think about this from your role. When's the last time that you asked your direct reports about the cadence of feedback that you give them? When's the last time you asked them about how you deliver feedback? If it's effective for them, right? Like I said, I'm guilty of doing or I guess I should say of not doing this as regularly as I should, or with, the overall team, maybe select individuals. But this is an opportunity. You can improve your working relationship with your team if you start getting feedback. Now, if you think about it, it can be challenging for your team members to give you that feedback because they're in a position where they're like, oh, I probably can't say anything to my manager that's going to upset them. But I'll give you one really cool thing on my current team. And I think it's awesome. It's, you know, different personalities from different people. I won't say any names or anything, but I have a person on my team and they will say to me in conversations, they'll say, I'm going to be frank with you. I'm going to be honest with you. And I love hearing that. I love it because this person's going, this is going to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable to say this, but it lets me know that they have trust and respect with me, that they're going, I'm going to tell Nick this. I'm going to express my opinion, my belief on this, because I think that he should hear it. It might be it might be direct to me. It might be direct about a conversation we're having, but this person's able to say, I trust Nick with this perspective or this information. And I think that that's so cool that someone can, like, they're basically admitting to me, I'm about to go out of my comfort zone here. And then they do it. Now, I have a couple of people like that on my team, and that's great. Again, I said this is a personality thing too. Not everyone's going to expressly say, hey, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, buckle up. But the fact is that some people are literally verbally saying that, which is super cool. And for the other folks on the team, I need to make sure that I'm getting like that proper engagement. And if I'm feeling like, hey, I can't really tell, I should be asking them questions to get that feedback. So that's going to wrap up feedback. I think that it's incredibly important to be able to ask for direct feedback, and how you do that's important. It's going to mean that people need to be in a trusting relationship with you, right? It needs to be a level of respect so that people will say, hey, I think I can go give Nick this feedback. And you need to be practicing giving it as well, because it helps literally everyone when you do that. Doesn't matter, as I tried to illustrate with this conversation, it does not matter what your level is, what your role is. Being able to give and receive feedback is super valuable. So I hope that was helpful. And I will do the thing before I sign off here that if you guys have any more questions, Giovanni, I didn't see any more responses, so I don't know if my answer helped. Or anyone else that's in the chat, if you have any questions, feedback or not, if it's just about software engineering, I'm not going to answer coding questions right now. But if you want to ask anything about, you know, it's technical, I'm happy to give a perspective on it, but there's a bit of a delay, so I like rambling a little bit before I sign off to let you type any questions you might have, and that way there's an opportunity for me to answer them. So please feel free. Awesome. Glad to hear, Giovanni. And I see software engineer at Microsoft. So, you know, another way that you can get a hold of me is send me a message on Teams. It doesn't have to be work related. I'm happy to try and answer. That's a bit of a special perk for Microsoft people. I'm connected to you on Teams. So if you ever want to reach out, please do. It's actually pretty cool. I've had people, the woman that I mentor, had a really cool experience where she said she had to go do something in C#, and I don't think C# is the language she uses. And she said that she went to go search for it online, and one of my YouTube videos was the first thing that came up, which is pretty awesome. So she was like, hey, like, I searched for this and I saw your face right away. But yeah, I don't see any other questions rolling in. If you're in the middle of typing, it'll try to... Oh, cool. Your advice is really helpful, big bro. Awesome. That's from Instagram. I'm glad that's helpful. Thank you for that. C# is great. Yes, it is. Arguably the best language ever. No, I kid with people. If you see me posting that kind of stuff on LinkedIn, I'm just kind of trolling some of the other people. It's for fun. I love using C#, well before working at Microsoft. It's my language of choice. To a fault, I will use C# for basically everything, even if I shouldn't. But I'm just comfortable with it. So it's kind of fun to poke fun at the other languages, but every language is just a tool for us to use. So different pros and cons. Okay, folks, I don't see any other questions though. So thank you so much. I do have an early start tomorrow. I have a call at 5 a.m, which is in a few hours. So maybe I will take this as a sign to log off. So thank you so much. I will be doing this again at 9:30 p.m. PST next Monday. So if you ever have questions that you'd like me to answer on stream, you can just message me on social media, pick a platform. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest. I don't think you can send messages on Pinterest, but find me somewhere. I'll be there. Send me a message and say, hey, could you answer this on your stream? And I'm happy to do that. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation, and we'll see you next week, I hope. Take care.